The Wall. That took a few thousand years. It all started with fear. Not excitement, not ambition, just the quiet, practical fear that someone, somewhere, might invade. Around 700 BC, long before anyone called it China, small kingdoms scattered across northern Asia were tired of being raided by tribes on horseback. So they began building walls, not one big wall, but many small ones. Mud walls, stone walls, wooden fences, anything to slow people down. Nobody thought this would turn into the longest structure on Earth. It was just maintenance. Each kingdom built their own section. Some were tall, some short, some didn't really go anywhere. Farmers and soldiers worked side by side, stacking stones and tamping down dirt, probably wondering why they were doing this in the middle of nowhere. The work was slow. The pay was worse. And most of the time, the walls didn't stop anyone. They just made the raiders slightly more annoyed. Then came Qin Shi Huang, China's first emperor. He decided that a patchwork of walls wasn't enough. In the 3rd century BC, he ordered them all connected into one continuous barrier. It sounded simple. It wasn't. Hundreds of thousands of workers, soldiers, peasants, and prisoners were sent to the northern frontiers. They worked for years, often in freezing cold or blazing desert heat. Supplies ran out. Food was scarce. Many never returned. But the emperor wanted results, and slowly, brick by brick, the wall began to stretch across the mountains. It wasn't beautiful. It wasn't even straight. It twisted and bent like a giant scar across the land. But it worked, at least for a while. The invaders were slowed, the empire felt safer, and Qin Shi Huang got another reason to call himself divine. Of course, the wall didn't stop there. Later dynasties rebuilt it, extended it, and sometimes just let it crumble. For centuries, it stood as a symbol of patience, not strength or speed, but patience. The kind that takes hundreds of years and thousands of lives just to make a line on a map. So, if you've ever wondered why it's called the Great Wall, remember? Great doesn't mean exciting. It means very, very long. The wall that kept getting rebuilt. By the time the Qin dynasty ended, the wall was already old news. Empires rose, fell, and forgot to maintain it. Parts of it sank into the sand. Others were quietly stolen by villagers who needed stone for their homes. After all, if you live next to a wall that's not doing anything, you might as well use it. Then came the Han Dynasty, centuries later. They looked at the ruins and said, "We should fix that." So they did, slowly. The Han expanded the wall westward to protect their growing empire and, more importantly, their silk trade. The Silk Road passed through dangerous territory, and the wall became less of a fort and more of a highway border marker. During these years, the wall wasn't one single structure. It was hundreds of miles of earth, wood, and stone connected by outposts. Soldiers patrolled endlessly, sending smoke signals from tower to tower when they spotted trouble. It wasn't glamorous work. A guard might spend months in isolation watching empty plains, eating dried grain, and wondering if anyone even remembered he existed. Sometimes the wall didn't stop invasions. It just slowed them down. The Xiongnu, early nomadic raiders, found ways around it. Others just bribed the guards. For a wall meant to last forever, it required constant human attention and boredom. Then, centuries later, the Ming dynasty arrived. They looked at the ancient ruins and decided to make something permanent, something monumental. Between the 14th and 17th centuries, they built much of what we recognize today: stone fortifications, brick towers, winding mountain paths. It took nearly 300 years. By then, the wall had become more than a defense line. It was a statement that China was vast, patient, and not particularly interested in visitors. But even the Ming engineers couldn't change geography. The wall stretched across deserts, cliffs, and endless hills. No army could guard all of it. Still, they tried. Slowly, relentlessly, generation after generation. Because in a world that never stopped changing, the wall was one thing that never hurried. The wall that outlasted everyone. By the 1600s, the Great Wall had already seen everything. Empires rise, kings fall, and entire dynasties turn to dust. It had been rebuilt, repaired, abandoned, and rediscovered so many times that even the people living near it stopped paying attention. It was simply there, a silent line across the landscape that outlived the people who built it. When the Qing dynasty took power in 1644, they didn't need the wall anymore. Their empire stretched far beyond it. Ironically, the wall had failed to stop them. They just walked through an unguarded gate. Still, it remained standing, weathering centuries of wind, sand, and neglect. Travelers from the west began to visit, astonished by its sheer length. Some thought it could be seen from the moon. It can't. Others believed it held secret chambers or tunnels. It doesn't. What it really held was time, layers upon layers of human effort, stacked and forgotten. For many locals, the wall wasn't a wonder. It was a nuisance. Farmers took bricks for barns. Roads cut straight through it. In some places, grass and trees swallowed it entirely. Yet it endured. Not because of strength, but because nobody ever managed to destroy all of it. By the modern era, China began to realize what it had, a symbol of endurance. The government started preservation efforts, not to rebuild the entire wall, which would take centuries again, but to protect what was left. Today, it stretches across more than 13,000 miles, though much of it lies in ruin. The stones that once marked the edge of an empire now stand quietly beneath tourists' feet. And if you visit at dawn, when the mist hangs low over the hills and the wind brushes against the old stones, you might feel what generations of builders felt: exhaustion, pride, and the strange calm that comes from doing something endlessly, just because it needed to be done. The Great Wall wasn't built in a day. It wasn't even built in a lifetime. It was built by time itself, one brick at a time over a very long, very sleepy road.